Hello everyone, hope you all are doing good. I welcome you all to a brand new episode of Gita. Uh, Welcome you all again to our talks after a small break. I I know that we haven't streamed since 2 weeks due to exams, and now we are back with a good informative videos and also good sessions planned for you all. Thank you all for supporting us and also promoting us. Please share this video link with your friends and family. Before starting, I would like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor Garu, Professor PVGD Prasad Reddy Garu, for giving this wonderful opportunity of hosting this platform. And also, I would like to thank our Lord Principal Garu, Professor Peti Srinivas Rao Garu, for initiating this platform. Now I hand over the session to today's anchor, Swaran Raj. He'll be taking over the session. Swaran Raj, are you there? I guess there is a technical error. Please give us just 2 minutes.
Okay, launch. Start, sir. Hello, people. A pleasant good evening to one and all present here. Myself, Swaranraj from Department of Electrical Engineering, Andhra University, Vizag. Hope you are doing great. As Team Gita is back again with a live talk this evening, I'm going to start this new episode by introducing our today's keynote speaker, Gopal Kirangan. Gopal Kirangan, currently working as Global Vice President Financial Service Insider, Sequoia backed enterprise. He currently manages the banking and finance portfolio across 30 countries, including US, UK, Brazil, Vietnam, etc. He holds 13 plus years of diversified consulting experiences of working with global fortune banking, financial services, insurance, and technology companies based in USA, Europe, Middle East, Asia, Pacific. Gopal Garu brings a unique expertise of digital banking, fintech, cards, and payment digital channels and digital wallets. Gopal Garu is an MBA graduate from premium business schools of USA with an electrical engineering background. He is an active speaker in the region covering diversified forms and topics. Gopal Garu is a mentor to few fintech players and sits on advisory panels for fintech-based curriculum for universities in Australia and Malaysia. He is also a core committee member of few fintech associations in APSU region. It is indeed a privilege for us to have you at this moment, sir. We will be looking forward for your vital sessions. Thank you for giving this opportunity, sir.
Thank you, Swaran Raj, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. Greetings from Malaysia. Thanks for joining me here, and thanks for the opportunity to the A University and leadership team and Professor Ramasudha ma'am for asking me if I can do this session. So before I get into all this talk, I think I just wanted to say I hail from Vizag. I mean, fortunate to study there, and thankfully I've been employed across many countries. It's almost 13 years outside India, working for global corporates. So without further ado, I would like to spend some 45 to 1 hour kind of a time giving my expertise or my experiences of working with many global banks on helping their digital transformation or innovation agenda. So without further ado, let me quickly share my slide. All right. So today I'm going to give some perspective of what's happening in the global world with respect to the digital financial services. I think many of you who are watching this might be in your engineering graduate, about to get graduate, or in maybe in your various parts of curriculum, be it MBA or some other MTech courses and all. And many of you might be have chosen financial services as one of the domain where you can look for employment opportunities. So I will try to give some perspectives of where we can see a mix between what is industry expecting from the university, and globally what the firms are looking for with respect to competencies and technologies or skill sets. So I will try to cover in my session. So moving on, I think as we all are aware and conscious of the fact, I think the global financial service industry has been moving to a rapid fundamental shift. So there are multiple reasons which are causing this shift. The one is, if you look at the banking financial service space, there are a lot of fintech players or the young players are entering into the financial service space. Like say, um, around 25 to 30% of the global banking and revenues have been eroded by non-banking players or non-financial service players or fintech players coming into the place. So this creates a very critical difficult situations for the banks to re-innovate themselves in order to make themselves relevant. So one is the first point you can see here is mostly on the pressure the banks have been focused on. And then there's a lot of cost the agenda of many of the banks today which have worked globally. The fundamental challenge is how to reduce their operating cost, how do they reduce the cost of capital, how to reduce their overall technology cost, how they can reduce the cost to acquire a customer. So these kind of challenges or forces are pushing banks to look at, or financial services to look at digital transformation or new operating models or business models. And then we have also seen a lot of new technologies that are coming into the banking space. And then all the global banks, be it Indian banks or the foreign abroad banks, they're also trying to infuse this technology to bring innovative use cases. And then I think we are all also been our expectations have also been increasing on a daily basis. So I think as a customer, we want all the banking services to happen on a click of a button on our mobile, on our tablet. We don't want to wait too much time on our customer care. We want right products to be sent to us to the right channel. So our expectations are also increasing on a day-to-day basis, which is become a very fundamental force of change for the global banking and financial services. And so as the other dimension which we see is pushing is the regulatory landscape. So globally, all the central banks, for example, in India, the Reserve Bank of India, and like that, all the central banks in these respective countries, they bring in new guidelines or new compliance kind of a frameworks or methodologies which banks have to adhere to, which is also pushing them to constantly change and move towards digital. So in my experience of working with the global banks, I think the fundamental agenda with many of the banks today is how they can transform their existing processes or existing tools to to new ways or new methodologies. So moving to the this slide, there are so many technologies that are currently available out there. So I think many of you might have read in your curriculum, or you might have read somewhere, or you might have heard somewhere, like every 30 to 5 days there is a new technologies that is coming up and trying to it's reaching 50 million people. So that is the pace of technology we are talking about today. So in overall, these are some of the technologies I have listed around. So like we talk of variable computing, we talk of artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud, 3D printing, IoT. So these are a kind of new technologies. Drones, they have been getting very popular in the banking and financial service space. So if and based on the analysis by Gartner, there are two technologies, I mean, in fact, three technologies that have been predicted to have the highest adoption in the next coming 5 years. So, which are like, say, artificial intelligence, which is one. The next is the data analytics or the predictive analytics. And the third one is blockchain. So these three technologies have been predicted to have the highest adoption in the next coming 4 to 5 years. So if some of you are planning to move to the industry in this time period, I think it's definitely you cannot discount these technologies. You need to have these kind of competencies in your CV if you wanted to make relevant. And then the use cases of these technologies are quite you know exhaustive, non-exhaustive. There's so many areas where this can be applied. For example, artificial intelligence has been applied a lot on the front end of the banking ecosystem, or a middle office, or front office, middle office, or a back office. At all the three players, all the three areas, artificial intelligence has been used. Robotics, we call it the robotic process automation. For example, many of the manual tasks which currently we do, like say reconciliation, for example, or an eyeball checking within a banking environment, all these things can be automated using robotics, the robotic process automation. I think you might have heard a lot about the predictive analytics, data being the new oil, data being the new air, and all. So predictive analytics, what does it mean is how do you predict who could be your next best customer, what your customer look like, what is the best time we can engage this customer. So this kind of analysis can be done. For example, it's also been used extensively in fraud management, anti-money laundering. So today there are technologies out there in the market. They will also measure how much pressure you apply on your keyboard to tell whether you're the right person logging into this bank account or doing this payment transaction. Other examples like drones, it has been used extensively in insurance industry in some of the other mature markets in Europe. For example, today I think many of you might be driving your own cars, or your own vehicles. What happens if any unhappy situation happens on the road? If in case of mishap or an accident, usually we call the insurance company. The insurance company will send an agent or a person come to the site location of the accident. They will take the report, and then after 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, it has its own time, you will process your claim, and then you will get the amount. So all this process have been changed in this new world with using drones. So what drones will do, instead of a human coming to the site location, if at all an accident happens, a drone will come, it take pictures of of the site incident and the collateral damage, and then it will send the pictures real time or real to real time to the processing center of the insurance company. By the time you go home, you will receive a message on your mobile that your claim has been processed, and you will be receiving the amount or the claim amount and so and so days. So this the reason for explaining this is the whole process of the claims settlement automation has been completely disrupted using these innovative technologies. I think blockchain, I think as I've mentioned, it has predicted to have the highest adoption, been used extensively by both banks, insurance companies, and even the central banks. I think in the recent budget announcement from in India, we also heard about CBDCs, which is the central bank issued digital currency or digital coins, all completely come or derived from the concept of the distributed ledger technology or blockchain. So all these new technologies are paving the way or helping banks to transform digitally, both from a business model perspective or an operating model perspective. I think you might have read or heard there's a lot of new kind of digital financial institutions that are coming out in the world. Some markets in Europe, they call it neo banks or challenger banks. Some banks in this side of the world where I'm living in Asia Pacific, we call it digital banks or digital only banks. What does this mean is you won't find any physical branches of these banks. Everything operate digitally. You won't have a you cannot walk into your branch. If you have an issue, you call the contact center or you do with a chatbot. So everything, the whole operating model of this digital banks will be run digitally, and then there's 100 near to 100% of automation of all the processes that happens in a digital bank. So just a key takeaway for some of the aspiring students out there who wanted to go to industry. So as I've mentioned, try to get yourself accomplished with some of these competencies, the artificial intelligence, AI, or how do you mine the data, get into big data analytics. It can be an IoT. For example, some of you might come from electrical engineering background. There has been good use cases been utilized by IoT by the global firms. All right, moving on to the next slide. So this is where I wanted to give you some quick snapshot of how next gen technologies are helping to get a large market share for some of the banks, or how it's helping some of the banks to transform themselves. So as I've mentioned, some of the jargons here, like say RPA, you can see here it's called robotic process automation, which I was explaining earlier. So it will try to bring down the cost of some of the key processes which banks use today by around 25 to 50%. And then what happens if a human runs the job, we have holidays, we can only work from say 12 hours or 9 hours, but rest of the time we need someone to take care, or another person from different shift have to come and look at that process. So all this being automated by using the robots. It could be like an ATM, or his ATM, or a cash deposit machine reconciliation. It could be a finance a kind of a reconciliation, or could be another finance process, or any other monitoring process. There are a lot of processes which have been currently been automated by RPA. And then this is where you can see 35 days it takes today for a new technology to reach 50 million users. So if someone is aspiring out there to come into the technology industry, so let's be aware and cautious of the fact. So every day a new technology has been coming up. We really need to be on top of it to learn if we wanted to master this thing. And this is the pace of technology innovation or disruption we are trying to talk about. And then this also paves a lot of challenge for the institutions as well. How do we learn this new technology, and how do we apply to a right use case and derive the right outcomes? That's always a challenge for the financial institutions. I think if many of you might have been learned in your academics, or currently going through these subjects. So if any initiative we want to go through in a banking and financial service environment, we need to accompany with a business case, or a high level cost benefit analysis from the board or the senior leadership of the bank. So what happens in a typical cost benefit analysis is, if you wanted to apply a robotic process to one robots to one specific process. So we will try to find out what does it, what are the costs involved in doing this. What is the revenue uplift that will come out of this process? What are all the costs that may not be applicable because we are automating this process? So we need to do a detailed business case, and then see the outcome and results before we have to do it. So this is what typically happens. Although from a conceptual wise, we all agree these technologies are quite good, but when we try to apply in the real case scenario and try to get benefit out of it, that's where the challenge, the detail is always in the devil. And then a few other places, like I think I was talking to some of my friends who are CEOs of some fintech companies in India. They say, and I could still I could feel the enthusiasm in them. Like they say, it's never been a good time to be in India than this time to be an entrepreneur. So a lot of unicorns coming. India stands in the top few countries which is producing a lot of unicorns. I mean, when I sit in this side of the world, every day I get a chance to interact with many of the young aspirants who wanted to be entrepreneurs, who have very good, innovative niche ideas. But the detail lies in how do you transform how do you convert into your business model, how do you make it sustainable, how do you put an overhead to your cost, how do you acquire your customers, how do you get your investors. So all this typically matters in setting up your business and taking into the scale. All right. So I just wanted to, in the next slide, I just wanted to give you some perspectives from a global digital transformation perspective. What is the spending currently happening? In which areas the spending is happening on the technology wise? So you can see some of the numbers. I think, apologies, these numbers would be a little outdated. It's in 2021, but I think the key message is still here. Majority of the global banks, we see they are spending a lot of money on these 5 areas, which is, as I've mentioned earlier, the big data and analytics, the cloud. I think cloud, if some of you are coming from a computer science background, or any of the electronics kind of a background, you will understand the beauty of cloud. So there will be a lot of cost savings. You can go to the market faster. The maintenance cost is less. You don't need to spend too much on hardware on the initial days, and a lot more other benefits, like you can scale your business as you go. And then mobility, like giving everything at the feasibility of your customers, giving them the right channels to reach them, transforming how you communicate with your customers. So that's where a lot of spending happening. The CRMs, the new age customer relationship management tools. So all these are getting very interesting. And social meaning, all your social analytics, how much you spend on your Facebook, Instagrams, how do you collect data from this and bring interesting insights to cross sell, upsell. So these are getting very interesting, and you can see the spend in these areas is growing significantly at a CAGR of compounded annual growth rate of 12.8%. So that's the metric we are seeing globally, which is very interesting. Although some of the incumbent banks or the incumbent financial institutions, their IT spends or technology spends are less, but I'm seeing a significant shift in the way these banks operate, right from US to the Asia Pacific markets or in Australian markets. So all the banks have today realized, or the insurance companies today realize, the need to for the digital transformation and spend wisely and effectively on their technology aspects in order to reap the benefits. All right. So, and then I think if I talk on the digital transformation of the financial institution, if I don't mention about this pandemic, I think I'm not doing justice. I think we all went through this very hard 2 years kind, and I think we still are going through it. We don't know when is the end. Hopefully, not very far. But uh, specifically for the financial institution, this period literally helped to push a lot many things digitally, since people cannot walk directly into the branches, they cannot communicate. The banks came up with innovative ideas or came up with efforts on how they can transform some of these processes. For example, today, without going to a bank, how do you open a bank account? So many of the banks are transforming eKYC solutions like KYC. I think some of you might not be familiar with the jargons. eKYC is electronic know your customer. Like you give all your details to open a bank account. So the whole industry globally is moving towards eKYC. How you can use electronic means, to use robots or something to read from your driving license or your passport or your Aadhaar, and then get some details and open your bank account. So that's one interesting space. Many of the banks I have seen, they also look at the selfie instead of doing a video call. How about you take a selfie and send? So using Instagram is also being used. Some of the banks, they leverage on the KYC done by other banks. For example, if I have a bank account with bank A, and tomorrow if I want to open a bank account with another bank, since I've already completed the KYC with one bank, how about we do a data sharing? We call it the open banking or an aggregator concept in some other markets. So how do we make sure if the KYC is done at one place, how can we leverage it opening the bank account at other place? So this kind of innovative thinking processes, sharing of data, looking at ecosystem model is getting very prominent after the pandemic, and we are seeing a lot of spending happening or thinking happening in these lines. So just wanted to give a perspective of the stats because of the pandemic. I think globally, I don't want to touch too much on the macro factors. I mean, the GDP has been slowed down by many of the global countries, and many of the countries are coming out of it. You can see some of the interesting metrics. Around 90% of the workforce, this is a global number, not too much about the India perspective. Around 90% of the average employees are working from home. So this is a clear sign on how banks are transforming themselves, or financial institutions are transforming themselves to infuse digital in everything and anything they do in the future. And then the another interesting metric, some of the jargons here, CRO is the Chief Risk Officer. So since everything is moving towards digital, so we have to sail on two boats. One is how do we embrace the innovation on one leg, and the second leg is how do you protect the interests of your customers on the second leg. So many of the global banks and financial institutions, risk officers, the chief risk officers in the banks, they are focusing on innovative technologies, how you can use an artificial intelligence, how you can use machine learning to operationalize some of the tasks or reduce the frauds or risk. So this is getting very interesting. And then um, because of the pandemic, the average increase in spend by the global banks and financial institutions on the technology or a digital transformation agenda has been increased significantly within the range of 6 to 11%. When I say technology spend, this could be on any angle. Either it could be launching a new channel on how a bank will contact you. It could be a chatbot, or it could be a transformation in the contact center or your website or a mobile banking, or it could be like launching a digital product. For example, if you take about insurance inclusion in India, it is not so high. Many of the young students are not very much aware of taking an insurance. So how you can because of obvious reasons. First, they don't have the literacy of taking an insurance. Second, they cannot afford the premium, or they say the process is too high. The fourth, they say they cannot give all the documents which are required for opening an insurance policy, getting an insurance policy, or opening a bank account. So this is where the banks are coming up with innovative ideas, how they can serve the students community better, what kind of new digital products we can bring in order to serve this community. So just to share some examples, I'm currently helping some of my clients in the region for applying for digital bank licenses within the region. And for all these banks, one of the key at least for some of them, one of the key segment or persona we call in the customer segments is the students. So how do we tap on the students? How do we build the long-term customer value with the students? When we say long-term customer value, means today you are a student, tomorrow you get employed. So you might need to open a payroll account. You might do a trading. So you need to open a trading account. You might buy a car, so a car loan. You might buy a house, new loan, and then the whole cycle continues. So they wanted to tap the students at the early of their journey so they can serve the better. So this is getting quite interesting as well. Moving on, so these are some of the examples of what are the immediate effects we have seen of the pandemic, and how the banks have transformed, and some of the initiatives they have launched because of the pandemic. For example, as I've mentioned, KYC is one. Many of the banks, which I know, and this is based on a survey we did with one of my previous employers, they say many of the banks, around 41% of the banks we interviewed at the time, increased their contactless payment. I think this is quite interesting, since we cannot touch and feel many of the things. We have the inherent fear, right? So many of them increase the limit on your tap. You use a credit card to make a purchase, you just tap. So previously the limit was quite limited. Now they have increased the limit so that you can purchase high value items using just a tap, rather than swiping your card, putting your number or an OTP, whatever the authentication methods. And then around 23% of the banks moved to IDV, like, which is identity verification kind of a methods. Many of them, they've opened new systems or solutions on how do you book appointment before you visit to your branch or to an insurance company. And then around 34% of the banks have transformed the processes. So I think if I'm a student, and if I'm looking to enter into financial service industry, all these things will give a very good insight to me on how I should position myself. um, I see there is a lot of need for the young talent who come with innovative ideas, new creative thoughts to transform the whole processes. So let me share some examples. I was recently having a conversation with one of the bank in Korea. So as usual, they'll have a big, it's a digital bank. As usual, they have a lot of IT teams. So I hear from them that around one third of the IT employees come from gaming background. So this is a quite interesting correlation. This is um, in the banking and financial service industries. Previously, the myth is like we need to bring in only those people who understand the banking, who have prior experience of dealing with banking and all. But now the industry has opened up. They want to bring a new talent, fresh ideas, new perspectives in how to do banking, how to do things separately. So I think we all at your age, I might be playing. I have played a lot of games, and I feel the UI or the experience which you have from the games is quite interesting. So they're trying to bring this kind of gaming experience into the banking and financial service industry. All right. Moving on, so just to give you a thought process on or a framework on how the digital transformation financial institution is looked at or focused, it's basically on the three parameters. So we call it the 3Ds. First is on digitize. Like say today, if you have four steps: step A, step B, step C, and step C to achieve an activity within a bank. So the thinking comes like, how do you digitize the whole process from step A to step D, or do we really need to go to the step B? Why can't we jump from step A to C? So this kind of thinking, retrospecting whether we need this step or this process has been looked extensively. So this is the first step of digitizing the core functions within the financial institution. So the next to come to the differentiation part. So I mean, after you digitize some of your processes, or of when you're in the process of digitization, you look at differentiate. How do you look yourself different from your competitor, or how you can put a different value proposition to your customer? So it could be using a new methodology, or a new framework, or a new product, or a new product feature. It could be anything. So that comes the second step. The third step of the digital transformation is around disruption. So how do you disrupt yourself, the industry, your value chain, and the way you operate by leveraging on, say, emerging technologies? It could be on AI, blockchain, or it could be any other interesting, or if you can completely change your operating model from a physical to a digital, or maybe a hybrid kind of a business model, which is a phygital, which have a mix of physical plus digital, the phygital concept. Or how do you work creatively with an fintech player in the market to launch a new product, or to reach a different segment of customers, like say students, or a silver economy people, or a people with the age group of 35 to 45 years, so or a people or someone who are there in a remote area, or a rural area where they don't have proper internet connection. So how do you segmentize and disrupt? So this is the three-step stage process which we see on many of the institutions are embarking on digital transformation agenda. So just to paraphrase, it is starting with the digitization objective. It is like digitizing or automation the core functions within your financial institution or your organization. The next come to the differentiation aspect of how you change yourself or increase your value proposition or look differently to in front of your customer. And the third one is disruption, using any of the innovative technologies. And the key questions which many of the institutions will ask, you can see there. I think if any of you are aspiring to come into the financial service industry, specifically to the digital arms of the institutions out there, I think be prepared to face some of these challenges or the questions when you try to enter these markets. So some of these key questions are like, how do you derive value across your people, process, technologies, and your business strategy? So in my personal experience of working with many banks, a lot of thinking goes in developing the business strategy. Like, how do you want to become yourself in the next 3 years or 5 years? So and which kind of segments you want to go after, what kind of products you wanted to launch, what kind of markets you wanted to enter. Say you want to stay in India, for example, or you want to go overseas. If it's overseas, is it Middle East or ASEAN or European market? So this is an expansion strategy. Or if you're looking at M&A, mergers and acquisition, you wanted to acquire, you want to go for a horizontal acquisition or a vertical acquisition, where is the opportunity? And then what is quite important in the digital transformation journey is the role of people and the cultural transformation. So many of the incumbent banks I work with, they face a lot of struggle in moving cards within the institution, because there will be a lot of cultural issues. They may not be able to work in pace. There will be understanding issues with respect to the new technologies, which are quite new in the market, so they may not be having a good understanding because there is no training. So all these things needs to be overcome in order to achieve success in the digital transformation. And then the second key question, as I've mentioned, it is deriving about the experience. I think what is changing the global banking and financial services perspective from a digital transformation aspect is how do you bring unique customer experience. Like say, if I sit here, I'm talking to you, on a click of a button I should be able to process a transaction. The whole banking is moving towards invisible way, we call it the invisible banking. Lot of transactions are happening towards happening with commerce, with conversation, we call it the conversational commerce. For example, I tell to a chatbot or an app, please go and do this transaction. So there's a lot of transaction that is happening. There are few banks in Singapore and Hong Kong which I see the chatbots will sell the home loans. So they will do the origination part of the home loans, and then they will bring to some stage in the insurance, in the mortgage valuation. So the whole invisible banking, conversational banking is transforming a lot in today's banking and financial service industry. So and I think you might have heard a lot, there are a lot of tech players, the big tech we call it, they're entering into the banking and financial service space. Today if you look at say payments and lending, these are two areas which have been disrupted very heavily in banking and financial service space. You see a lot of startups and fintech coming in this space, be it in India or abroad in other countries where I work. They are dominating the fintech space, and these companies, they come with very innovative ideas. If we and they're attracting strong investor community to invest in their ideas and take them into the next scale. If you look at the valuation of these companies, they're touching the moon in less than few years of time. For example, there is this bank in Brazil called Nubank, Nubank, Nubank in Brazil. It started in 2014 or 15. In less than 5 to 6 year time, the valuation went up to 30 billion US dollars, and they're doing very well. It might go even more high. And if you look at any of the traditional bank, in order to get a valuation of 30 billion USD, it might take few decades. It could take some 3 decades or 4 decades with the traditional business model. So these are the new world, new areas. That's where digital transformation and digital is playing a lot of role. And then the third important question, I think, which the industry is also expecting, and I also see when I try to hire people under my team, is I'll also look at how analytical they are. It really doesn't matter which background you come from, but how analytical you are, whether you're able to analyze after doing this activity, is there a value addition, is there a growth of your revenue, or if there's a reduction in your cost. If any of these variables have been able to been met or able to answer these kind of questions, then you're a good fit. So having an analytical mindset is quite fundamental and enabler for the digital transformation agenda. Moving on. So I just wanted to touch a little on artificial intelligence, which is getting very, very popular, and it has been used extensively across the various places in the bank. On the front office side, we see a lot of chatbot, customer experience, customer service. We're also looking at middle office and back office, like reconciliation, etc. So across the value chain of the banking, it has been extensively. And then the reasons are manifold and multifold. I think people want things to see and happen on the go. And even for example, what happens in a banking environment, if you work in a contact center of a bank, so daily they have to do some cold calls to cross sell or upsell some of the a credit card or an insurance product or a mortgage product. So today they leverage on artificial intelligence and new techniques. So they don't need to do cold calling. So every day a customer contact center person come to his desk, he will be popped up, but these are the top 10 pursuits which you need to reach today. So it is making life easier, everything is making simple, and many of them are leveraging on ecosystem. So today if I'm a bank, I mean the strength lies with when I work with similar kind of entities in the market. So there are few banks out there globally, they work with partners like 500 partners, 600 partners. 1,000 partners. So these partners are like, say, a fintech players, or this could partners could be another banks or in associations, uh, or industry eminent bodies, could be anything. And this association could be for, say, data sharing, or increase the ability to cross sell, upsell, or launch new products. So the I think many of you, I think you should spend some time reading about this new concept of banking that is coming up, called as ecosystem banking, or a platform driven business models. Like everything, uh, all the banking players, institution players are currently looking at how they can monetize the platform economy. And reaching a different kind of customer segments using this platform, and how they're trying, and they're also trying to create a commercial model out of it. So very interesting kind of a read. And then the key fundamentals which are pushing the institute to look at these kind of angles is like the constant need to reduce the cost. Like in order to show growth uh, on the balance sheet at the end of every quarter, at the end of every year, either they have to increase the revenue or reduce the cost. So two fundamental aspects. So the lookout for what else they can do in order to reduce the cost, or what else they can do to increase the revenue, is always the priority. And then looking at new business opportunities, either it could be an inorganic opportunities or organic opportunities. And then how do they react faster in order to launch a new product or serve a customer better with this changing regulatory landscape. For example, um, if it takes 1 year or 6 months to launch a new product in the market, so I think you're already late. There will be 15 other people who in the market who will be launching a similar kind of product in the market. So we need to be very conscious, need to work in agile mode and lead. So typically what happens in a financial institution is, in order to get an approval to do any simple task or a project, they might need a hierarchy of approvals. Either it could be a good project or bad project. I mean, they all go through this process. So because it takes a 2 month cycle time to approve or reject a process or a project, they might be missing the opportunity of launching innovative products in the market. So how fast you can launch, how fast you can get approvals. That's why we when we talk to some of our clients, they are all towards a lean kind of an operating model, so that they can take the decisions faster and move to market in a more agile way, and launch more products in a less time. Right, here are some of the examples. Since I talk about artificial intelligence, I felt like giving some examples on how some other banks globally are looking at artificial intelligence. For example, I think some of the names you might not need introduction. So JP Morgan, one of the global big banks, they're using artificial intelligence to mitigate the credit card fraud, and they're also look at specific customer segment campaigns using artificial intelligence, using the concept of hyper personalization, etc. And there is other this another uh, bank, quite popular, Capital One. They use big data and analytics to predict the purchase behavior of the customer. So today what happens in for many of the banks, they use digital tools to predict the digital behavior of the customer. So when I say digital behavior, it could be on, like, say, what kind of apps you install on your mobile, or what kind of things you purchase frequently, which mall you go very recently. So all there's a lot of data points will be collected. Like in fact 3,000, 4,000 plus kind of attributes or parameters will be calculated, and then they will assess whether you wanted to give loan to this person or not. So they will do the credit risk assessment. For example, DBS, I think they also have they also operate in India, and so they use NLP to analyze the customer conversations, if they're getting the good feedback or bad feedback. And then State Street, another popular bank, they're also leveraging on AI. And one more, they're also trying to understand the customer behavior and push the right product accordingly using AI. And mortgage and RBS, another popular global bank, they're also trying to use chatbot to sell mortgage. So there's another similar bank in Asia, we call it OCBC Bank. They're also trying to use chatbot for doing for mortgage. sales as well. So these are some of the examples. What I'm talking so far is not it's not a James Bond kind of a movie. It is happening in reality. Many of the banks are trying to reap benefit out of this use cases by deploying innovative technologies in their whole transformation agenda, right? So the next case study I am talking is about the hyper personalization. So today what many of the banks are spending time is, if they do a similar kind of marketing campaign to every customer out there, they may not be successful completely. So they have to do a hyper personalization very well. For example, today I might be using a lot of email checking or Viber or a WhatsApp. So how do I engage with this customer who spend a good amount of time on emails with the right campaign? How do I increase how do I increase the purchase power of this customer using one channel? How do I customize the product based on the needs of this customer? For example, I spend 10,000 rupees this month on my groceries and telephone bill. So based on that analysis, estimate how much this person could earn in a month, and accordingly um, personalize the product of, be it a personal loan or a credit card loan or some other loan, or an account, and offer them. So this, the whole hyper personalization concept is getting very interesting in the financial services space. They use many of the new techniques, as I've mentioned earlier, on artificial intelligence, data analytics, um, big data, and automation. So there is an interesting acronym we hear in the banking service world. We call it intelligent automation. When we say intelligent automation, it's talk of two things. One is your data and analytics, and plus your automation. So which comes to the intelligent automation part. So with this whole hyper personalization concept, the key aim of the banks is how do you increase your sales, be it by channel, how you can create a hyper personalized experience or an omni channel experience, whichever the channel comes from. Say, for example, today a customer calls on your contact center and they visit your WhatsApp banking channel. So how do you match the experience? How do you talk in the similar way to this customer and make sure you convert him to be a loyal customer and reduce the churn rate of this customer? So these are all the concepts of hyper personalization, which is getting quite interesting in the global scenario. So I think this would be my last slide, and after that I would be happy to take any questions. So what we are seeing is, in order for any for any bank or financial institution to be successful in their digital transformation agenda, they need to be focused on four key attributes. So maybe starting from the last one, which is the business and operating model, I think this is going to be very key. They need to be very clear on what are the business priorities they wanted to achieve in the next few years, what kind of cultural shifts they have to make, what kind of bank or a financial institution they need to be seen. Say either they wanted to go as a platform player or a digital only player or a hybrid kind of a player. So this forms your operating model. And then when we talk of business strategy, it's talk of like what customer segments you are after, what is your, what are the key personas you wanted to target, how do you configure your banking portfolio, what kind of cultural changes you want to make in your bank, how do you enable these digital transformation capabilities within your organization to achieve the goals. So the next comes the second pillar, which is the technology and infrastructure strategy. So if, in order for your digital transformation to be successful, your technology strategy to be aligned to your business goals and objectives. So um, I think we all need to understand to the fact that technology is an enabler. So the technology needs to enable whatever the business goals we have set. So this includes how do you make an inclusive kind of infrastructure, how do we reduce our OPEX costs or maintenance cost, how do you make sure we build a technology solution that is scalable, flexible, and affordable. And then the third important dimension that is getting very popular and very critical is how do you work with other players in the market. These players could be regulators or another foreign entity player or a fintech player, or it could be another bank, or it could be an individual or a VC firm. how do you work with all these players, or a telecom company or an insurance company? How do you work with all these players to derive to gather the data and derive interesting insights about your customer and increase your cross sell upsell, or using this data to have your defense, the first line of defense or second line of defense or third line, to mitigate risk of fraud. And the key lies in choosing the right partner to work with. I think it really requires a lot of focus to choosing the right partner, because the partner we want to choose should help your business goals. They're sustainable enough, and we should follow. We should both have the same kind of ideas, etc. And then the fourth important dimension is the customer focus. So gone are the days where we have seen a lot of attention by the banks and financial institution to specific products, like how do I launch innovative or specific products. That was the focus. Now it is gradually being changing to customer centric kind of solutions, ideas, or products. So, and experience is changing the whole thing, how the banks are operating. And then a lot of innovation, or how do you transform your distribution channels, is going to be key. So, just to paraphrase, in order for any of the global banking and financial institution to be successful in the digital transformation agenda, they need to focus on these four key pillars: having the right business strategy and operating model, which is sustainable; building the right technology infrastructure and building blocks that will bring them the scale and process efficiency. The third dimension is how do you make sure you work with the right ecosystem partners and data, and then how do you continue to enhance your customer experience, customer focus every day. So with that note, I think with this limited time, I just wanted to give some perspective of what is happening on the globe out there, and how some banks are approaching in a digital transformation perspective. I would be happy to take any questions, or you can connect with me on my LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. Anytime I would be happy to support or clarify or learn from each other. Thanks everyone for having me here. Thanks for the opportunity once again. Back to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I hope it's an informative session and many of the students got benefited from your talk. And I hope many students will be planning towards this fintech as well. Thank you so much for giving your precious time for us, sir. It's been a pleasure for us.
Thank you. Swaran, I think you're on mute.
Please unmute, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, audience, for spending time with us. If there is any queries or any help you need, you can post that in live chat. We will happy to help you.
I guess there are no questions right now, so we can conclude, sir.
Thank you so much once again for the opportunity. Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us in, and it's been a great pleasure for having such an eminent personality of giving this talk. And I also thank Professor Ramasudha ma'am and AU Computer Cell, and as well as my professor mentor, Professor P. Mallikarjun Rao Garu, for giving this wonderful opportunity of hosting this platform. Please share this video with your students, with your fellow students, and also your friends, so that they get benefited from these talks. And and also we'll have many interesting videos coming on. So if anyone is interested, please contact us. And if there are any suggestions, we are free to accept it. And thank you all for joining in. See you next week. Thank you.